Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. We've got a Necrons video for you today. Rate it or hate it. We've got the Necron Doomscythe, which is one of the aircraft models from the Codex. We're going to go through the data card, my tactics, and at the end of the video give it a rate or a hate. And we'll see where we are at the end of the video, I guess. Before we do guys, just a little plug for my Facebook group that we've got on Planet 40k Facebook group. And the link for that will be also in the description down below. I'm posting virtually daily pictures now of the goings on behind the scenes, what I'm up to, hobbying, painting, terrain, that kind of stuff. So we're building another small community on Facebook, so get involved if you haven't already. Okay, so the Necron Doomscythe, let's get into this data card. Okay, so let's start with the points. I've remembered the points as the first part of the data card. I always seem to forget that and do it at the end. 230 points. Quite expensive, isn't it? 230 points for an aircraft. We'll go through this data card and kind of work out if that is worth it or not. So let's start with where should we start? The keywords. Keywords is a vehicle, aircraft, fly, and of course Doomscythe. Now while we're on that aircraft keyword, we may as well quickly go over what aircraft actually means, because for those newer players, they might not be so sure. So first of all, there's a few rules and restrictions purely for aircraft models. Firstly, they've got to start in reserves. They can't start on the battlefield unless they've got hover or something, I think it is. But we don't have hover, so don't worry about that if you're a Necrons player. So you're not getting out in turn 1. You're not getting out in turn 1, which means you're not going to be firing in turn 1. We'll get onto that more when we talk about the shooting stuff. So you'll be coming out turn 2 from strategic reserves as well. You're going to be treated as if you're in strategic reserves. So you're coming out on the battlefield or table edge, 6 inches away from the table edge. In the old edition, we were flying pretty much wherever we wanted to. That's not the case anymore. We've then got to do a minimum of 20 inches of movement. You'll see that in the stat line at the very top there. You've got to do a minimum of 20 inches. If you don't, then you literally have to go back into reserves. So you do your 20 inches. After you've done your movement, you can then pivot up to 90 degrees. So let me actually go back a little step. Before you do your 20-inch movement, you cannot turn the model. Unless, of course, you're coming on the battlefield from reserves. That's when you first set it up. But if you're already there, you're going to be going in a straight line. You can't pivot before movement, so you're going in a straight line, 20 inches. After you've done that 20-inch movement or 20-plus inch movement, you can then pivot up to 90 degrees in either direction. So that has its own little problems in itself, because you need to kind of think about your next movement phase when you're doing the current movement phase, because you need to think, where can I land my flyer in the next turn? If you can't land it for any reason, maybe because your opponent or even yourself, you've got enemy models or terrain features that are stopping you from getting your base into a location, or there's just simply no space on the battlefield and you're flying off, then you will go back into reserves again, which means you're going to miss another shooting phase, unfortunately. Another restriction is some of the secondaries is not going to be able to do them. Aircrafts can't do things such as behind enemy lines. There's also anything that relates to holding on to objectives, like capture enemy outposts and things like that, because they've got no OC. The OC is 0, we'll go on about that in a moment. The one bonus it does have though is only models that have got the fly keyword can actually charge an aircraft. So that's something to remember. We've got a little bit of a defense against foot melee units, so if you've got an Orc Boy mob of however many Orc Boys you get in a unit nowadays, they literally can't charge your aircraft. So that's one bonus that they've got. Now that we've gone over that, let's get back into this data card. So we've got a movement of 20 inches, 20 plus inches rather, as we've just kind of mentioned. Toughness is 9, a little bit light, but that's what it is. 3 plus armor, no invulnerable save, unfortunately. 12 wounds, leadership 7, and OC is a flat 0. Nothing in there. Can't be holding any primaries and doing some of those secondaries, as we said. I do like that it's got 12 wounds, but the toughness is lacking a little bit. And the 3 plus armor without the invuln save is also lacking in comparison to other heavier things in this codex, for example, Doomsday Arc. So that is the statistics. Let's move down into these weapons. The main party piece for the Doomscythe is the Heavy Death Ray. So the Heavy Death Ray has got sustained hits D3. So if you get a critical hit, you're going to get D3 more hits, which is nice. 36-inch range, which is also nice. You don't necessarily need the range because you've got that movement, 20 plus inches. When we say 20 plus inches, by the way, that could literally be 50 inches. It could, whatever you want it to be, it can zip up the battlefield. Just remember, you can't be pivoting until you've actually ended your movement. So 36 inches isn't necessarily needed unless you've got caught up in your movement and you kind of trapped yourself into going to one location of the battlefield because you don't want to fly off the board, but you still want to fire back at a certain target. So you know what, 36 inches is actually fine. 3 shots, so you've got half a chance of getting a critical hit there, which would be D3 more. You're hitting on 3s anyway. Strength is 16, which is beautiful. Only the Doomsday Arc is bigger than that with strength 18. Minus 4 AP, D6 plus 1 damage. So a minimum of 2 damage, a maximum of 7 per shot that goes through. I mean, you could get a maximum of 6. No, you can get more than that, really. I was going to say a maximum of 6, but if you roll 3 6s to hit, and then each one of those D3s is also like a 3 extra shots, that would be 3, 6, 9, 10, that'd be 12 hits. That's actually magic. I mean, that's very unlikely to happen, but if I've got my maths right there, that would be 12 hits in total. I think that's right. Let's move in. Twin Tesla Destructor is the next weapon. I actually quite like this weapon. I know I shouldn't, but I do. Sustain hits 2 and you're twin linked. 36 inch range again, so it matches up with Heavy Death Ray. 6 attacks, hitting on 3, strength 8, no AP, 2 damage. Now with 6 attacks, you're likely going to be dropping a couple with your Ballistic Skill 3, but with Sustain hits 2, you're likely going to get a 6 in there. So you're pretty much on average going to get 6 hits. And then with Strength 8 and Twin Linked, you're going to be doing a bit of work on Toughness 4 models. Unfortunately, there's no AP. So going up against Toughness 4 Space Marines with a 3-up armor, if you've got 6 wounds going through, they're only going to really fail 2 of them. So it's a little bit lackluster in that department, but against other things, it might be better. But yeah, then you've got the 2 damage, haven't you, which feels a bit wasteful on, say, like a Termagon, for example. Melee side of it, you're not really going to see much of this because it's only really when a flying unit can charge it. 3 attacks, hitting on 4, strength 6, no P1 damage. It's not really worth talking about. Now the abilities will relate to that Heavy Death Ray, the main weapon here, so we're going to have to kind of go back full circle a little bit. First of all, Deadly Demise D3, cool. Reanimation Protocols, cool. The Atavistic Instigation is the ability that will relate to the Heavy Death Ray, so we kind of should have said this as we were talking about it. It would have made more sense, but here we are. So each time this model targets an enemy unit with the Heavy Death Ray, your opponent gets a choice here. They get to declare whether they're going to stand firm or duck for cover. The choice is theirs. If they stand firm, all of a sudden you get critical hits on a 5+. So now you've got even more of a chance of getting those sustained hits D3, because 5+ are critical hits for sustained hits D3. Great. Option number 2 for your opponent is duck for cover. So until the end of the next shooting phase, they're going to get a -1 from their hit roll. So that's not a bad choice. Well, it's good for us, not so much for them. Because if you target, for example, I don't know, something that's similar to our Doomsday Arc. In fact, let's just target a Doomsday Arc for the sake of argument, because we know the Doomsday Arc. We've got the 3+ split skill with heavy, it's a 2+, right? It'll put it back to a 3+, because it's a -1 to hit, if they selected the duck for cover option. Because this doesn't apply to just infantry, I think it did in the previous edition, or was it a stratagem? I can't remember, but I think it was just for infantry. Now it's for every unit. So they've got the options there, critical hits, which is going to help us with our damage, or a -1 to their hit roll, which is going to help us with our defense and survivability for units that are being shot at by their shooter units. So a couple of good options all around there. So then we've got the damage table, 4 wounds or less, it's a -1 to our hit roll, not ideal. We're already hitting on 3s, but even though we've got sustained hits D3, we don't want to be hitting on 4s, do we? So that is the data card. Let's move into my tactics. So you need to be very careful with how you pivot an aircraft in general, because you can find yourself with no option but to fly off due to bad positioning. So you've got to consider your next movement phase before doing that pivot. We kind of mentioned that in the before the data card part. I just want to double get that in your head, because if you just move willy-nilly and maybe you've faced into a corner of the battlefield, well, you've left yourself no option. You're going to have to now fly off. And if you're going to miss another shooting phase, you've already missed the turn 1 shooting phase, maybe now it's turn 3, turn 4, and you're missing another shooting phase, that 230 points does start to seem quite expensive if you are missing shooting phases. So you definitely want to be making sure you're shooting every single turn that it can, providing that it's still alive. Now the great thing here, we're going up against an aircraft like the Doomscythe, is your opponent is going to struggle to hide from it because of course that movement is so big, as well as the 36-inch range, and it's quite high up as it's a flyer. So you could be gunning stuff on the backfields, and maybe it's your opponent's home objective marker, you could be shooting down something like that. If there's maybe one unit on it and you take it out, then all of a sudden they're not holding their own objective marker in their command phase, which could be good for, well, it'll be good for your primaries of course, but sometimes the actual primary mission relates to, I don't know, gaining CP if you're on your home objective and things like that, so you could nullify that as well. Now the Death Ray has a unique ability which can apply those critical hits on a 5+, which is nice, or your opponent is going to select that -1 to hit. Now if they do select the -1 to hit rather than the 5+ critical hit rolls, there is still a way to gain the 5+ critical hit rolls if you are using the Obeisance Phalanx detachment. Now the Obeisance Phalanx has a stratagem where you're pretty much gaining critical hits on a 5+ with your whole unit, with all your weapons. So that will also apply to the Twin Tesla Destructor as well, and not just your Heavy Death Ray. So you could actually be getting critical hits on a 5+ as well as the -1 to hit for just 1 CP. In fact, we're sticking with that detachment for a moment. There's also the -1 to damage for a vehicle stratagem, normally reserved for the Silent King. But if you don't need it for that battle round, maybe you just stick it on the Doomscythe because it's being targeted. It will assist with keeping it up and running. Now an alternative detachment that you could use your Doomscythe in could be the Hypocrite Legion. The Hypocrite Legion, it might assist with a few previous dodgy movement turns that you've done. Maybe you penned yourself into a corner facing outwards and you know your next movement phase you're going to have to fly off. Whereas if you're going to hyperphase in your opponent's turn, you take it off, bring it back on. You're not going to be missing out on a shooting phase, and maybe you've got a better location, a better angle at an enemy unit. Now we also shouldn't forget about those Twin Tesla Destructors. Let me just go through those a little bit more in detail here. On the regular toughness 4 2 wound kind of models, yes, you're only going to be killing a couple of them per turn. That's still going to be 30 to 40 points a turn being removed from the battlefield, which isn't actually the worst, on top of the Heavy Death Ray, which is doing a bit of work. But remember, this is only a secondary weapon, it's not meant to be the be all and end all, but getting 30 to 40 points off as an average against like Space Marine units, intercessors and things, if you do that for 2-3 turns, that could be what, 90 to 120 points just removed. That will literally cover half of the points cost that you've got paid for this Doomscythe, which is 230. I mean, at the end of the day, you do need to work out how you're going to get your points back. 230 points is quite a lot, and the Death Ray does need to be doing work during the game. Now, comparatively, when you're talking about a 230 point anti-tank model, you need to compare to the other anti-tank units we've got in our Necrons Codex. So first of all, we've got the Locust Heavy Destroyers. I mean, they're 50 points each, so you could get 4 of them and still have 30 points spare. That's only 4 shots, but with heavy, you're rerolling 1s to wound against the correct targets. They are less strength at strength 14, not 16, but they are a flat 6 damage, not d6 plus 1, so the damage is definitely better, miles better in fact. They've got heavy and they reroll 1s to wound, as we said. They've got some form of OC, so they can hold objectives, and they've got a combined wound total of 16, compared to the Flyer's 12, although they are toughness 6, not toughness 9. So there's a comparison there. I definitely think I'd be selecting Locust Heavy Destroyers over the Scythe. Next one, we've got the Doomsday Ark, 30 points less, so it's 200 points. Again, it's got objective control and it's got OC5, you know, so that's going to hold on to some objectives quite well. It's got blast and heavy. It's got a better strength of strength 18. D6 plus 1 shots rather than 3 shots, but that's a minimum of 2, so your worst roll there is 2 with a maximum potential of 7, and blast on top of that as well. It also has access to devastating wounds, and it's got the Gauss flare arrays on the sides, so you can get some anti-infantry shots out, which, yes, the Twin Tesla Destructor does that too, but they are damage 2, these are damage 1. I suppose horses for courses on that one. It's actually got 2 wounds more at 14 wounds, and it's got a 4+ invulnerable save, which is big. That's huge, so that's definitely a better pick as well. The Doomstalker, Corruptic Doomstalker, another option. It's only 135 points, so you could get 2 for 270. Okay, that is 40 points more, but we're trying to be even-handed here. We did with the Doomsday Ark, it was 30 less. With the Locust Heavy Destroyers, it was 30 less. They've got an invuln save as well. They've got combined total wounds of 24 if you've got 2 of them. Again, blast, again, heavy. They do hit on 4s, but if you're in the Canoptic Court, they're doing work because they're re-rolling everything pretty much. 5s to hit in Overwatch. They've got damage 3. Okay, it's not D6 plus 1. I think I prefer the D6 plus 1. But damage 3 is okay. And they've got objective control 4 per model as well. I think they're also better picks. I mean, you could start to look at other units that are not necessarily pure shooty, like the Nightbringer. The Nightbringer's 255. I know it's not exactly in the same ballpark as a Doomscythe, but just the Gaze of Death alone, which is the shooty attack from the Nightbringer, that's D6 plus 3 damage at strength 12, and you're hitting on 2s as well. So that's just the shooty side alone. It's not even talking about his abilities, it's not even talking about his melee output, which is the best thing about the Nightbringer. So again, there's another better option there. So I'm kind of struggling to find something that the Doomscythe is actually better in this category. Okay, so let's get on to the rate it or hate it for the Necron's Doomscythe Flyer, aircraft, whatever you want to call it. It's a cool looking model. It packs a punch at strength 16, but as we just mentioned in the comparison section of this video, there's a lot of units that are just better at doing what they do in that role, anti-tank. It's not really known for its anti-infantry, even though it has that Twin Tesla Destructor, but it's not, you don't bring it for that. It's 230 points with no OC on top of that. Some of the secondaries are not doable behind enemy lines, so unfortunately, with regret, I'm going to have to go with I hate it. I hate it. I don't really select it a lot, so yeah, there's just better options, guys. You'll have to let me know, do you select it, and in which detachment do you use it in? I'd want to know.